First, I want to extend a very warm welcome to all who are joining us here today. In my previous life, I served as a civics and government teacher, and so I just have to say that it does my heart good to see the good people of Owensboro take this beautiful Saturday and a UK game day to become more civically engaged. Hats off to you all. To introduce myself, my name is Benjamin Geese, and I'm a policy director with Kentucky Youth Advocates. At KYA, we work every day to ensure that policies that benefit children make their way to the state legislature and beyond. Our goal is to make Kentucky the best place in America to be a kid. And that's what takes me to why we are here today. We are here today, frankly, because as you know, kids can't vote. And because kids can't vote, it's up to us adults to make sure that we enact policies that will help kids grow into healthy, well-educated, and secure adults. Today, we are honored to engage with former Representative and candidate DJ Johnson and incumbent Representative Jim Glenn of Owensboro's 13th House District. We are excited to learn more about how each of these community leaders will serve the needs of our youth should they be elected this November. Please remember that each candidate will be joining us separately for today's question and answer session. So be sure to stick around to hear each candidate's perspective. Each candidate will be given the same questions and of course the same amount of time. Before I pass things along to my colleague, Mahek Kalra, who will be leading our Q&A session with the candidates, I want to share that should any audience member have a question that is not addressed today, please email me your question and I will be sure to pass that information along to the candidates. You can reach me at bgeese, G-I-E-S, at kyyouth.org. Again, that address is B as in boy, geese, G-I-E-S, at kyyouth.org. And now, please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Mahek Kalra of KYA.
Thanks, Ben. And just as a reminder, I know we're here to talk about football, kids, but U of L is also playing, Ben. Not to make it UK U of L, but let's get back to what we're here to talk about, really, children's issues, that is. So before I begin in asking you questions, Representative, I just really want to hear from you. What was it that made you enter public service?
Well, it was about giving back to society. Society has been extremely good to my family, and we just want to help other people, basically. So I had a chance. I was talked to by a number of people. I was originally a city commissioner in the city of Owensboro, and my kids attended Burns Middle School and Apollo High School, and my wife taught at the community college also. My wife and I both taught at the community college, and we decided we would run to try to give back to our society, trying to help our citizens and help our children.
Well, thank you for that. So we know that Kentucky kids face many challenges and opportunities. We know that kids don't grow up in silos, that we know that poverty affects health, health affects education, education affects safety. So what issues surrounding kids, Kentucky kids, are you particularly passionate about?
The community I live in, roughly 19 to 20% of the kids are challenged with food. They're hungry. And we try to make an effort to make sure kids are at the community college. I have donated food to our food pantry, and the food is given to our students and their children if they run short of food. We try to make sure the kids try to get enough food. You don't learn in school very well if you come to school and you're hungry. And that happens in our society too much. In society this rich, it goes on too often. I try to make sure, did you want me to go on or?
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. The other thing is education. I'm an educator. So my wife and I both made a decision a while back to teach at Owensboro Community College. I applied for a job here. When I came here, they realized my wife had a master's degree from University of Wisconsin. And they asked her, did you have a master's? She said, yes. She indicated she didn't come here to teach. She just came in to support her husband. They said, we have a job if you would like it. So she went home and wrote up a resume and applied for the teaching position here. She was outstanding teacher for the entire state of Kentucky in 1998. She could flat out teach. 5 of her students are currently elementary school principals.
Wow.
So she's done an excellent job. She received $1,000 from the University of Kentucky. She received a Great Teacher of the Year plaque from the University of Kentucky. She's received a Great Teacher of the Year plaque from the community college system and received a trip to Texas. But again, she can flat out teach. And we both attended University of Kentucky. I got a doctorate degree from UK. My wife picked up a doctorate from UK. And both my kids picked up engineering degrees from University of Kentucky. My job is to try to educate as many students as we can. In my community of Orangeboro, only 1 out of 6 students currently has a 4-year college degree. And during my time here, we've been trying to increase that number. Okay?
It's great to hear about your passions and values for education and just having access to food. Those are 2 critical components that we talk about often at Kentucky Youth Advocates.
I totally agree with you.
So we hear that Frankfurt is broken, Washington is broken, that there's so much polarization really right now. So talk about your own assessment of Frankfurt's landscape.
It's not just Frankfurt, it's our entire society. For some reason, we think we're opponents. We live in this world together. We're in the same boat. Wherever the front of the boat goes, the back of the boat goes. We have to get used to rowing in the same direction together. We have to learn how to share. We have to learn how to participate in society and not be angry with each other. Just because you have an opposing view does not believe you're angry with the other person. You just have an opposing view.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a box of crayons that has different colors, the box does not have all one color,
Mm-hmm.
but you still get the drawing done.
Mm-hmm.
We have to focus on that. And Frankfurt has to focus on that too.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to realize we have different views, opposing views, and we have to figure out how to come together to make those views work together, both in Frankfurt, the state level, and at the state federal level.
Thank you. That's really important. So another hot topic that we've kind of been facing as not only a country, but also as a state is our longstanding racial disparities among our residents. So how will you help address these challenges in your role as a state legislator?
By being there. The reason I teach in the classroom, I've been teaching in the classroom for 30 years. I teach face-to-face. That's because a number of our students have never seen an African-American male teach. I have a BS degree in business management. I have an MBA in marketing from Wisconsin. I have a doctorate in higher education with a doctoral dissertation in finance from UK. My job is to make sure the students in our society has seen somebody like me, and I'm normal. My father was a policeman. My father was a policeman for 30 years. My mother's 90 years old. She lives on a policeman's pension. Every one of my mother's children, every one of my mother's grandchildren, except one, has a 4-year college degree. We have degrees from Illinois, Wisconsin, Cornell, Kentucky, Maryland, and another relative has a degree from Iowa. I can't remember what university off the top of my head. And my son's just finished up all the coursework on a PhD at Michigan State University. We believe in education, and we're all African Americans. We're just trying to get back to society and let society see that there are people like us who can help society grow. And this helps other people, because a lot of times other people don't see other nationalities. So it exposes our society to other nationalities, basically. Okay?
Definitely. Yeah, that's very important to have figures and role models such as yourself out in the community. So we appreciate what you do. Another question that I have is, we know that COVID-19 has impacted every Kentuckian,
Yes.
and everyone across our nation too. So how can the state prioritize an economic relief and also promote public health and safety during this time?
Well, we have to give back. This pandemic, the problem is no one's seen anything like this in 100 years. The last major pandemic was 1918, Spanish flu. It killed 675,000 people in the United States. It killed millions worldwide. This one right now has killed over 200,000 in the United States. We're number one in the world. The number of people is killed. We have to be aware that everyone needs health care. And we're one of the few nations in the world that doesn't give all of its citizens adequate health care. Just 1 second. Can I answer the door real quickly? Because that's my delivery.
Yes.
Is it okay with you just a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the beauty of working from home, right here in the flesh.
This is 2020.
And so as we're waiting for the representative to join us, which will be here in just a moment, I encourage all of our listeners to reflect upon what's been said thus far and really see how the representative's views match your own and plot a course for a better future. That's my homework assignment, mid-course assignment as the former civics teacher on the call.
Yeah. Oh, you got it in the thing. Stick it here. Let me go back upstairs. Let's put it in the hallway. I'll put it in. Just push it back. So you close the door. Good deal. Just leave it there. Tell me what I should do. What's way before?
This is your doorway wasn't big enough.
Okay. That didn't happen. No. Anything else? Can you send me a copy of those two things?
You have to ask the store about the.
Oh, that's not the opposite. Thanks very much. Take care of yourself. Good seeing you. I'm sorry. I ordered a chair for football this fall. A lazy boy. They just delivered it. The problem is there's very little sport. But the chair is inside the house now.
You're prepared. You're ready to go.
I'm good to go. And I apologize. Ask me the question again. I'll answer. I apologize for the interruption.
No, you're totally fine. And we were just talking about really COVID-19 and how do we focus on recovery and also promote public health and safety.
This COVID-19 is a pandemic economic crisis worldwide. The other thing is our economy worldwide has changed. And we have to take a look at the economy. The thing we have to do in this state and nationwide is focusing on getting this economy rolling with this pandemic. 40% of the people at the start of this pandemic in Kentucky was unemployed. We don't have any money. That's another major issue. The economy slowed down. Another major issue. Unemployment, which the Republican governor in the previous office in 2017 closed 60% of all the unemployment offices in the state. So when the pandemic hit, the current governor was scrambling, trying to get everybody paid. He's still trying to get everybody paid. He's not trying to make this an issue. It's just that he was left with few resources. So we have to try to, we have to do three things. I'm sorry, I'm not making this very clear. We have to focus on the economy, economics. We have to focus on technology. We have to focus on healthcare. We have to get those three things up and rolling. You generate education, healthcare, economics, jobs, the economy, those three things, and you'll jumpstart the economy any place in the world. We really have to focus. We have to choose how we're spending our resources. We just can't just jump at this. We got to make choices on our priorities and spend our money so we can get people employed. We may have to change how we're operating restaurants. And we have to change how we're paying the people in the restaurants. Because the government doesn't print, the state government doesn't print money. They get money from the public that has jobs. 75% of all our money in the state comes from two items. One is income taxes, and then the money comes from sales taxes, taxes that, the big grocery stores and mass merchandisers. So we have to focus on getting the public employed in those areas. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but it's really a hard, complex question. And we have to work together to do this. We just can't do it all. One person, the governor can't do it by himself. He needs the legislature, both the House and the Senate. We need the public to understand this is really a hard concept. And people say, I can do it all by myself. No one can do this all by themselves. It's really difficult. But we have people in government who's saying, trust me, I can do this all by myself. And that is an incorrect statement. I apologize if I'm offending anybody. Okay? Did you want to ask me another question? But this pandemic is really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's going to be with us. It's going to be with us into the first quarter of 2022.
Wow. Well,
that's exactly what I said too. Wow.
Yeah, it's tough to, we're already 6 months into this pandemic, or probably longer, and now just
we got another 18 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So that kind of leads me into, if you're elected as a decision maker for your district, what budget investments will you promote that keep Kentucky kids, families healthy, safe, and secure? One,
we have to make sure we continue funding. Investing in our teachers is an investment in our future. Because what we're doing, don't get me wrong, I understand that teachers say we don't want to teach face-to-face because they don't want to get sick either. But teaching always works best if you're doing it face-to-face because you can see the children's expressions, you can see how they feel, things of that general nature. Remote teaching is not as strong a form of teaching. It works, but teaching face-to-face is much better. So we have to figure out, one, how to fund our teachers, how to fund their training, how to fund their technology, make sure they're up to speed, make sure our children are eating every day. One of the reasons you're going back to school is make sure you're getting breakfast and lunch, making sure our kids eat and they're not hungry. There are families that don't have enough resources. We've got to figure out how to help fund those people. Now, I'm making it sound like they're opponents. How to help fund our citizens to make sure they're getting sufficient food and the kids are getting sufficient food. And we have to make sure everybody has a good paying job so they can pay taxes into the state and they can take care of their children and pay their mortgage payments and pay their rent. But we got to focus on that and figure out how can we generate more jobs in the state that pays a reasonable salary. When I was a young man, not a young man, when I was a teenager, and I was in high school, minimum wage was $1.25. That $1.25 is equal to $10.50 today. But yet minimum wage today is $7.25. And the public doesn't realize that. The hamburger you buy at McDonald's for $1, when I was a teenager, it cost 15 cents. I bought it from Henry's Hamburgers. I worked in a grocery store and I bought 6 hamburgers for $1. It was right down the street from the store. We've got to figure out how to get people to make a little more money. Now, I know everybody's not happy with this, but to jumpstart this economy, we got to focus on that. Am I answering your question?
Yep.
I'm not asking the way you wanted to answer, but do you feel I've answered your question?
Yep. No, I want you to continue elaborating. I think, we really want to, it's going to be weird. It's going to be a 1-year budget this year.
Yes.
We're not typical to. So if there's other budget priorities that you want to uplift, please do.
Something else goes in our society also. We keep cutting taxes. Taxes is the only thing the government has to work with. When you cut the taxes and you don't offset it with stabilization in some other area, you end up borrowing money. You end up with a deficit. This shouldn't be a surprise to the general public. You can't cut stuff You can't cut taxes. Saying we're trying to jumpstart the economy and not balance that cut someplace else. Because if you do, you're going to end up with less money. So the state or the federal government has to borrow money on the outside. When you borrow money in, you end up with a deficit. This is not brain surgery. It's how society works and how economics work. It's how math works. You take a math course and something costs $1 and you lower it to 80 cents, there's a 20 cents difference. Where do you get the 20 cents from? You got to focus on that, okay? I'm not saying it's okay, but we have to figure out how to balance that budget reduction and that tax reduction in our society.
Definitely.
I'm not saying all this stuff is perfect. It's just that that's how the math works. Okay?
Yep, that is helpful. Well, I have 2 more questions, and one of them is around childcare. So before COVID-19 pandemic, half of Kentuckians lived in a childcare desert. And due to this economic downturn, really, it caused a lot of folks needing childcare. So and also shows that we need to value childcare as well. So how can Kentucky work to fill the gaps of childcare access so Kentucky parents can re-enter the workforce and provide safe care for their kids?
Yeah, when my kids were small, I tell you, my wife had a master's degree from Wisconsin. She did not work for 12 years because she wanted to make sure her kids got good care. She baked cookies twice a week. It sounded like baking. My kids thought she was baking cookies. She was teaching my kids mathematics. They learned measurements, and before they can eat the cookies, it was like peanut butter cookies. Before they can eat them, they had to count them. So when they went to kindergarten, they knew all their numbers. They knew their colors, things of that nature, because she spent time with them. I was the only one working. We have to figure out how, not figure it out, it's not brain surgery. We have to make sure the state sets up sufficient child care for our adults and our children. We have to make sure our children are being taken care of. And they got good child care. And in the process of getting good education, the parents are not worried about their children all day long, and the children feel safe. It's important as a child to feel safe and warm and well fed, and things are being taken care of. You feel secure. It's awful when a child is worried about whether you have a place to stay. My father's a policeman, and my sister and I didn't know this when I was a kid. I had good meals every day. My mother stayed home. I walked home from school every day and had lunch. My mother was there. My kids had their mother there. And you feel secure. You don't realize that until you're grown. That secure feeling you have, that you're getting a good warm meal every day, and you're not worried about the electricity being cut off and the gas being cut off and you being thrown out of your housing. I didn't worry about that. My children didn't worry about that. We have to see that other children don't worry about it. Because when you're worried about that, how do you focus on math and fractions and sentence structure in school when you're worried about not having a secure home life? Hope I answered your question. We have to set up additional additional daycare or facilities for our children so the parents feel their kids are safe, the kids feel safe.
Definitely. That makes sense. And another question that I had for you, you talked about technology and the importance of investing in technology. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely highlighted the educational inequities and internet access. So how can the state government work to improve equitable internet access for all students?
What we have to do is set up internet across the state. We have to set up broadband, and so people have access to internet in all parts of our community, and they don't. Some areas, because the population is so thin, it's not profitable for an internet company to set up a internet system. And in that case, that's why you invented government. Government has to step in and help fund the areas where the population is very thin. It works in Louisville. It works in Lexington. It works in Northern Kentucky. It works in Orangeboro. It works in Bowling Green because the population is dense. But in areas where population is very thin, where the kids may have moved out and moved away after high school, there's not enough population base, not enough resources to set up a strong internet program. And in that case, that's why you invent government. Government has to step in and fill those voids with additional resources. And we have to figure out how to take our limited resources and help get those places kick-started so they can survive. Okay?
Thank you.
And we can do it with the electric company, because they already have a system in place, and just attach internet to the electric companies or the gas companies, which are already supplying gas and electricity across the entire state. Help them get those programs up and running.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to let you riff for a couple minutes on just any closing thoughts that you have that you want to share with members of your district, or any statewide child advocates that we have here today.
I can tell you, bottom line, I focus on 3 issues. One is jobs. I had a chance to travel across the world. I didn't travel just to travel. My wife and I were supposed to, we set money to the side to travel when we retired. My children asked me to travel immediately where I can still walk and I'm not in a wheelchair, which is I did. So I went to 5 continents on earth. I went to Asia, I went to China and Hong Kong, and I went to Northern Africa, and I went to Europe, and I traveled across the United States just to take a look at how the economies run in those various areas. And since I teach business, I teach finance, I teach econ, I teach marketing as a teacher, I wanted to make sure my teaching was the best I can make it. And so I looked at these things. Look at healthcare, because the places you can't run a good economy if your workers are not healthy, if they're sick all the time. So you have to focus on that and make sure we have technology and sufficient jobs in our area and education in our area. Those are the things I focus on, and I will continue focusing on. This is my 12th year in office, and my job is to give back to society and educate as many people in our society as possible so they can support their children and their families. Okay?
All right.
Any other questions?
No, I think you answered all of them. We really appreciate you taking your time, especially on a Saturday, to talk with us. This is really recorded, so we're going to definitely share this with other folks across Owensboro and within your district.
Thank you.
So that way they could hear from both candidates. And we definitely appreciate everything that you've done here for today, to share with what your values and core beliefs are. So I appreciate the time, and we hope to see you soon.
Take care of yourselves. Good talking to you. I am going to turn off if that's okay, okay?
That is totally fine.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you very much.
All right. Now we are going to wait for Representative Johnson to join us. In the meantime, if any of our attendees would like to put anything in the chat, feel free to do so.
And while we're waiting for Representative Johnson to join, I also wanted to point your attention to our Electoral Advocacy Toolkit that KYA has developed. This toolkit is developed with our everyday person in mind. So whether you're a policy wonk like Mahek with all sorts of arcane knowledge about the healthcare system, or just your regular everyday voter, these questions are designed in order to engage candidates more around the needs of our youth and our children across Kentucky. This link was also included in your email that was sent out yesterday for the RSVPs. If you take a look at that, you'll also see a slide deck or a PowerPoint presentation that you can use in order to educate a wider group of audience. And we'll take a look at that here in just a moment as I get it pulled up.
Hello, Representative. Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go.
How's that?
Very good.
Otherwise, I have to do hand language, and that would get ugly.
I don't think I'm good at sign language, so I don't think that's going to work out so well. So I'm glad we got this figured out.
Yeah. So we have a few minutes, or?
I think we could go ahead and get started. I don't think we need to wait any longer. Ben, do you want to do the same intro as before, and then we could dive into questions?
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to take the opportunity to welcome former Representative and candidate DJ Johnson. We are certainly honored to have him with us this afternoon. And Representative Johnson, one thing that I told some of our attendees in the Zoom was that I think that it speaks very highly of an individual, in particular the citizens of Owensboro, to join us for this candidate forum on a Saturday afternoon. The weather's nice. We have crisp fall air. UK is playing. My friend and U of L fan, Mehek Kalra, reminded me that U of L is also playing. So I just want to say hats off to the folks that are joining today. And for those who perhaps saw those UK and U of L football games as a little too enticing, this is being recorded. So it will also be shared with members of your constituency throughout House District 13. Also want to remind those who are still on and those who will view in the future, we just wrapped up a conversation, Q&A conversation with Representative Glenn. That was for approximately 30 minutes, and we want to absolutely ensure, folks, that we will give the same amount of time and fairness to Representative Johnson joining us now. And so without much further ado, I'll turn things back over to my colleague and friend Mehek, who will begin us in our approximately 30-minute Q&A session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. And thank you so much, Representative Johnson. It's great to have you here as well. So before I dive into the tough questions, I like to call them, I wanted to start off with just asking you a question. What made you enter public service?
That's a great question. A little background on me. I grew up here in Owensboro. I was born and raised here, graduated from Apollo. I hate to give a date, but I will, 1975. And then I graduated subsequently from Western Kentucky University in 79 with a degree in communications, but my focus was, I went there on a 4-year ROTC scholarship. So I graduated with a commission as a second lieutenant in the Army. I went into the field artillery, served 11 years there. My last assignment left me in Washington, D.C. in the Pentagon area. And I swore I would never go there, but once I got there, we kind of fell in love with the place. We had a church there that we really, really enjoyed. So what was supposed to be a 3-year assignment there turned into 15 years in Washington, D.C. Having said all that, I knew, even though we lived there and we had a life there and we were happy, that Owensboro was home. I knew I was going to come back here. My wife is also from here. And there just became a time back in 2003 when I knew it was time. And I won't go into all the details, but it was clear that it was time for me to come home. And so I moved back here and managed a small business for 17 years till we sold it a couple years ago. But when I got back here, I recognized that a lot of the things that were issues when I was a 17-year-old guy going to Western were still issues in this area. And I became very frustrated with that. And because of that, I did what a lot of other people do. I just talked about it and complained about it. But ultimately, I said, you know what? If I'm really going to complain about this, I ought to be willing to do something. And I had a friend encourage me, say, well, if you're serious, it sounds like it's time for you to run for state representative. And I asked a lot of friends about that. I prayed about it and decided that it was true. It was time for me to run. So that's what I did in 2016. What motivated me to run was simply, if you're going to complain about something, you ought to be willing to step up and try to do something about it. And so that's what led me to getting into politics.
Well, I appreciate that answer. And we went to rival high schools, so I'm not going to tell you what year I went, but I went to Davis County High. So, well, I won't hold that against you whatsoever.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As long as we don't have to talk about OHS, I'm kidding. OHS fans, I'm joking. All right. I live across from the sports center. I love the city, but I graduated from Apollo.
Well, so I'm going to now dive into the kid questions, I would call them. And so we know that Kentucky kids face many challenges. We know that kids don't grow up in silos, and that poverty affects health, health affects education, education affects safety, and so on and so forth. So around kids' issues, what's your particular passion?
The thing that got my attention the most in recent years, and particularly when I became a state representative and I was open to more information, more issues, more opportunities to find out about things, I began to look at the adoption process and the foster care process. And that's what got my attention initially. It just seemed like it was so difficult and so costly to go through the adoption process when there are so many children that were waiting to be adopted, so many parents that wanted to adopt, and yet for some reason it took years for that to happen. So that became one of my priorities. I worked with Representative David Mead. He's the primary sponsor on several bills for children, and I've enjoyed very much working with him in those issues. So really that was the first area that I got into.
Thank you. And we work closely with Representative Mead, so it's great to hear that he's also a friend and confidant to you in your work around this issue in particular. So we hear that Frankfort is broken. We hear Washington is broken. There's so much toxicity and polarization right now. In the last couple of years, I would say. Can you talk about your own assessment of Frankfort's landscape? And how do we really make a difference?
Yeah, and I think I might have something of a unique perspective on this, or a unique position on this. And the toxicity in Frankfort is nothing like what it is in DC, in my opinion. I've talked to a lot of the people in DC. Like I said, spent 15 years there. It's its own world. There's just no doubt about it. And Frankfort, of course, is kind of a miniature representation of the same thing that goes on in DC, but it's not anywhere near like that. I mean, we all go to UK basketball games together. We all sit next to each other at Louisville football games, and we talk and we're friendly with each other. We don't agree on policies all the time, but if you looked at every single bill that was passed in the last few years and did a percentage check on which ones were bipartisan, it's like 87 to 90% of the bills that passed with bipartisan support. But of course, we got those issues that we're very, we're very passionate about. And so that's what gets the attention. But generally speaking, it works. And I'll say this also, our founding fathers wrote a constitution that creates equal but separate branches of government for a reason. There's supposed to be checks and balances. It's supposed to be hard to do things at the federal government level, because if it was easy, then there's no telling what they would do. Making it hard protects us from them. So I understand that the toxicity is not good, but to say it's broken when it's supposed to be difficult, I got a little difference of a perspective on that, I think, maybe than most people do. They just want things to go well, but in effect, what they want is they want their things to go well. And so when it's difficult to make things happen, the private citizen gets protected.
Well, another question that I have for you is really relevant, again, to what's happening right now. We know that our Commonwealth and our nation continues to struggle with a long-standing racial disparities among our residents. So how will you help to address those challenges in your role as a state legislator?
You know, I'm just a big believer in one-on-one and small group conversations. The demonstrations are great for bringing attention to an issue, but demonstrations by themselves don't fix issues. What fixes issues is when people on both sides come together with an understanding that there's a goal in mind, and that goal is to improve things. And when those groups get together and actually talk and communicate, that's when things get better. So I appreciate the fact that we're having demonstrations and rallies. I support 100% the right to have a peaceful demonstration. But the work begins after the demonstration. And that's what I've been working on. I've been having one-on-one conversations with people around Owensboro. Both sides, you know, different perspectives. And I've grown in my opinions about things. Things have become a little clearer to me. And I think the people I've talked to, hopefully the same thing has happened. So, you know, what I do as a state representative, sure, I'm going to look for policies that are going to make things better. But ultimately, it's going to be people, individuals working together that make things better.
So it leads me to this next question that's really around policies, since you mentioned policies. And we know that this upcoming year is going to be a 30-day short session, but also historically, it's going to be a budget session
Right.
for the state as well. So if you're elected as a decision maker for your district, what budget investments are you willing to promote that keep all kids healthy, safe, and secure?
That's not just a good question. That's a very tough question. And let me preface it with this. We don't know the fiscal impact that the COVID situation is going to create. We just know it's not going to be pretty. So anyone that says they're going to promise X millions of dollars for this or that program in addition to what we're already spending money on, I just believe they're being disingenuous. We are going to have to look very closely at what we do, but what that gives us is an opportunity to really focus in on the priorities. You know, we want to do everything for everybody in Frankfort. That's just the nature of, you know, as a servant, you want to do that. But our priorities are going to be tough. When it comes to children, I'm still going to fight for streamlining the foster care program and the adoption care program. We've got a good start on that, but we've got a ways to go. But we need to get in just to several of the topics I know you're going to talk about in detail. It has to be a priority. And that's, you know, that's usually what politicians say. But we put our money where our mouth is. And one of the things I've noticed very much is just the challenges that social workers have, dealing with the issues we have in the families. I'm just going to answer it that it is a priority for me because I know we're going to get in more detail without me trying to do this big monologue. I think what we got to start with is whatever the baseline is, we start there and then see where the money is, see where the revenues are, I guess is the best way to put that. And then we got to pick and choose the things that really matter, and children really matter, of course. So there are going to be some things that are used to getting money that are just not going to get money next year. But one of the areas that has to receive the funding is the different programs we talk about for children. It's kind of a general answer. It really didn't get specific, but I know you're going to get specific. So we'll save something for a little bit later.
Well, I mean, I think if you want to get specific now, feel free to do so. If there's particular topics or budget investments that you think are important that you want to elevate right now, I'm happy to have you answer them and share.
Well, I kind of started with, and it's not so much a budget investment. I really am going to focus on adoptions because, you know, children without homes are so much more at risk, obviously. When we'll get into juvenile justice and that sort of thing, all that begins with a stable home, whether that's an adopted parent or a child, a parent of birth. I don't know what the term is there. Birth parents, there we go. Whether it's a birth parent or an adopted parent, that child needs a stable home. And when we start there, everything else gets a little bit better. So that would be my first priority.
Thank you for that. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, half of all Kentuckians live in childcare deserts. And due to the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, we know that the percentage has probably skyrocketed. And so how can Kentucky work to fill gaps in the childcare access, I should say, so that way parents could really re-enter the workforce and provide safe care to their kids?
It's a challenge. The parents are used to being in their jobs. They've arranged methods and ways for their children to be taken care of, whether it's through a relative or friend or an agency or whatever, childcare, and all that's been thrown out the window. I'm a pretty strong believer that it's time for us to get back to work. I think we're doing a good job of it here in Davis County, particularly. The statistics say that we did real well. We've weathered this storm very well. In fact, we were recognized nationwide for Owensboro being the only metropolitan area that actually reduced their unemployment rate this year versus last year, which is quite an accomplishment. But then you talk to those families that aren't protected by that, or we're still, they're at home because they're not working. It becomes a real challenge for them. To me, it gets back, it's a general mindset that we need in Frankfort to free up people to do what they know how to do. And then what they can't do, that's where we need to step in. I just want to get people back to work, let them live the life that they want to live, get through this COVID thing. And that's not going to change the fact that we need to be looking at things. Juvenile justice is an area that's just become of an interest to me. I think we can really make great strides there if we start early. Education, I know that one of the things I learned my last time as a representative, that if we can get kids on the right track by the 3rd grade, the results in their high school years is magnified. It's just huge. If they get off on the wrong track by the 3rd grade, it's hard for them to get back on the right track down the road. So that's an area we really have got to focus into, is those first couple of years when they're going to learn the right habits or not. I was kind of rambling. I apologize for that, but that's kind of where we need to go. We've got to give people their lives back. Mm-hmm. When we do that, then we can start focusing and identifying what we need to do to help them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that kind of goes on to this next question, really around COVID-19 and recovery, because we know that COVID-19 has had an impact in every Kentuckian and on every single Kentuckian. And how do we as a state prioritize not only economic recovery, but also promote health and safety during this time?
It's going to become, we will be able to do things at the state level, but it really is going to take the effort at the local community level. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to go completely to the other end of the spectrum of life. I work at the Senior Community Center here. I'm very involved with the Meals on Wheels program. And I see firsthand, we used to feed 200 people, seniors, through the Meals on Wheels program before COVID. Now we're feeding 600. We're approaching 700 every day. So we've almost quadrupled. We've at least tripled the number of people that are impacted by COVID and just need help. And that's true at the senior level. It's true at every single level. Now there's federal funding coming in. We've had just tremendous support from a lot of different organizations, Owensboro Health and the federal grants and GRAD, and several organizations that have just came to us and said, hey, we want to help you. And I know that's going on at every level. There's basic number one is food. We've got to take care of people's their most basic needs. Most basic needs is food. There's a lot of local community agencies that are doing that at every level. The schools are doing it. There's private groups that are doing it. And that's what's going to get us through it. Honestly, when we get to the state and federal level, all we can do is identify funding. The federal level is coming pretty good on that. identify funding, and make sure we get that money to the people that need it. So it's when we're in Frankfurt, we're almost limited by what we can do hands-on because we're not hands-on. We're basically two things: policy guys and purse string guys. Our job is to make sure that the money doesn't stop at Frankfurt and gets down to the people who need it at the community level. And then at the community level, people are stepping up big time. And we don't like this virus, but when you look at what people are doing to help each other, it's very heartening. It's encouraging. I mean, we're taking care of each other. And that's going to have to continue until we get through this thing.
Definitely. And a point that you brought up earlier is the importance about education. And I think even now, so during this pandemic, it's highlighted the educational inequities and just internet access. So how—
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that's one thing that I want to talk about really now is, how as a state government, how can the state government really work to improve equitable internet access for all students?
Well, we've got, I hope I get the term right, Connect Kentucky, or there is a push. It was started back in the Steve Beshear when he was governor. I have to tell you, I have some issues about how that got started. Bottom line is we through that, and Connect Kentucky is out there in the rural areas, but we've got the trunk in place. What we don't have is that last mile that we talk about for so many people. And we're just going to have to, one, encourage, and two, incentivize the internet providers to get out there and take care of those last few people. One of the issues we're talking about here in Owensboro, Davis County area, Kenergy is wanting to get into the internet service provider business. And it's been a conversation back and forth. Ultimately, though, we're going to have to provide for those rural areas. We have trucks pulling out to provide relay stations for the internet for the students that are at home right now. And that's a great idea. I mean, it probably, it solves the problem for this semester. Doesn't solve the problem down the road. So I don't know that it's government's responsibility, or even if they would do it well, to get that last mile. But what we can do in Frankfurt is, again, encourage / incentivize / really encourage the internet service providers out there to go ahead and make that last connection to those people that need it. And we have a little say in that. So I'm looking forward to making that happen.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. And in order that we are fair to both of our candidates, those are the questions that we asked Representative Glenn. So I'm going to go ahead and say, Representative Johnson, I would like you to just riff a couple minutes. I know there was a few things that you mentioned, like the justice system and how we can make change, and other topics that we didn't really get to. So, just wanted to let you talk more freely for the next couple minutes, or even more, about really some children's issues that you're passionate about, or other issues that you really care about that you want your district to hear, and our state advocates.
Okay, I'll be glad to. I've just got to reemphasize the entire adoption foster care process. I have friends who have adopted multiple children, and their stories about what it took to go through that process. Now, we want to make sure that the parents are qualified, and that they are the right parents for the child. And so there has to be some kind of process there. But it costs thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars to go through the process. That just makes no sense to me. What we're doing is penalizing the parents who want to be able to provide for the child by taking money away from them that they could have used to provide for the child. So I'm really looking at that. And I want to go back to the juvenile justice discussion for a little bit, because it's, when we talk juvenile justice, we think we're talking juvenile delinquents and juvenile felons. I mean, there's just this perception. And really, more often than not, and I don't have percentages, I don't know if anybody does, but when we talk about a term DNA, you probably heard DNA, with dependency, neglect, and abuse. We really need to look at what those children are going through that has caused them to make a decision to do something they probably know better than to do. And if we can identify that and cut that off early, at the first signs that there's an issue. Look at all the things we make better down the road. Never mind the savings we have with them not being incarcerated in any manner. They actually become productive members of our community. So this is an area I've just started looking into, but it's an area that I'm going to become involved in. It's becoming a passion for me. If we can make a difference up front, look what we do at the end. And so that's going to be a big issue for me. I think those are the two that I'm really passionate about. I want to be involved with everything we can. And as a legislator, that's our responsibility is to be ready to be a jack of all trades. Be ready to involve yourself in a lot of issues that we may not be experts about, but we got to find the right people who are the experts and then make wise decisions. But those are areas that I'm definitely going to be involved with.
Well, we really, truly, Representative, appreciate your time on a Saturday where I know the weather is nice and there's a ton of college football on, but so we appreciate you spending your Saturday with us. And this is recorded, like I shared with Representative Glenn. So we're hoping that we get this to you, this link out to you. So if you haven't, folks haven't joined today but are interested in hearing from you in particular, and Representative Glenn, they could hear both of you all talk about and share your values and beliefs for kids and families. So again, thank you, and we appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
And we hope, you mentioned data, so I'm just going to touch on this. In November, we release our Kentucky Kids Count data book every year. And so the new one will be released in November, of course, and it's focused on 16 child well-being indicators. And so when you're talking about juvenile justice data or health data or education or family and community data, we'll have that for everyone to share.
Let me touch on this because I did not realize the wonderful information that you guys have until you invited me to do this, and I started doing some research. You have good stuff. Now, I'll say that I'm concerned about the fact that Kentucky was 37th nationwide. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm looking forward to doing that work. I honestly am. But I want to thank you guys for providing the information you do because it's very helpful. It's been really helpful.
I'm glad to hear that, and we'll make sure that you get the latest copy of our upcoming Kids Count book.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. And to
Thank
our
you for
attendees, what was that? Sorry.
I said, thank you for today. This is very worthwhile. I appreciate the time that you're putting into this. So thank you for letting me come on.
I appreciate it. Well, we loved having you on, and Representative Glenn. I think this is really going to help our friends in Davis County to really hear from both candidates. And as always, we have our Electoral Advocacy Toolkit that was mentioned by Ben earlier on. So that way anybody could look at that. We have data on our website as well that we were just mentioning. So as always, we encourage really our child advocates to be informed and educated and really understand the issues impacting Kentucky kids, because kids can't vote, so we need adults around to vote for them. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Representative.